The massive Zorathian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a dark storm cloud blocking out the stars. 10,000 warships arranged themselves in perfect geometric formations that had struck fear into the hearts of countless civilizations across the galaxy. Each vessel gleamed with polished metal and bristled with weapons that could crack planets in half. Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, a cosmic dominator, watching the small blue planet that would soon bow before the might of the Zorathian Galactic Empire. Captain Jake Murphy was enjoying his morning coffee aboard the human Defense Station Frontier Watch when the proximity alarms started screaming like angry cats. He nearly dropped his mug as the sensor displays lit up with more red dots than a Christmas tree. His communications officer, Lisa Park, spun around in her chair with eyes wide as dinner plates. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa said, her voice shaking like a leaf in the wind. "We have incoming ships, a lot of them." Jake moved to the main display and felt his jaw drop to the floor. The alien fleet stretched across space like a massive wall of metal and death. Each ship was the size of a city block, and there were thousands of them floating in formations that looked like someone had arranged toy soldiers with a ruler. "Ryan, get me a count," Jake called to his tactical analyst Ryan Cole, who was already working at his station with fingers flying over the controls. 10,000 ships, sir," Ryan reported, his voice steady despite the impossible numbers. "They're holding position at the system's edge. No hostile actions yet, but Captain, those are some serious weapons they're carrying." Jake grabbed the communications array and started broadcasting emergency signals to Earth Defense Command. Within minutes, every human military installation in the solar system was buzzing with activity. Admiral Kate Stevens received the alert at her headquarters on Luna Base and immediately called an emergency meeting of all defense commanders. Meanwhile, Admiral Vexstar was preparing his standard conquest speech. He had delivered this same message to over 3,000 different worlds, and the response was always the same: terror, pleading, and eventual surrender. The Zorathian Empire had perfected the art of intimidation through superior numbers and overwhelming displays of force. "Open a channel to the primitive world," Vexstar commanded his communications officer. "Let them hear the voice of their new masters." The message broadcast across all human communication frequencies in perfect English, translated by advanced Zorathian language processors. "Inhabitants of the third planet, you stand before the might of the Zorathian Galactic Empire. We have conquered over 3,000 star systems, and countless billions of beings now serve under our rule. Your resistance is futile, and your technology is laughably primitive. You have one of your local time periods called hours to surrender unconditionally or face complete annihilation. Prepare for glorious servitude under the Eternal Empire." Jake Murphy listened to the transmission with his mouth hanging open like a broken door. Lisa Park blinked several times as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Ryan Cole looked up from his tactical display with an expression that suggested he was trying very hard not to laugh. On Luna Base, Admiral Kate Stevens heard the same message while sitting in her command center surrounded by dozens of military officers and defense coordinators. The room fell silent for about 3 seconds before someone in the back started snickering. Then another person joined in, and within moments, the entire command center was struggling to contain their laughter. "Did they just threaten us with glorious servitude?" asked Colonel Nick Parker, wiping tears from his eyes. "That sounds like the worst vacation package ever." Admiral Stevens stood up and walked to the main communications console. She had served in the military for 25 years and had faced down everything from space pirates to asteroid impacts, but nothing had prepared her for aliens who sounded like they learned English from watching old science fiction movies. "Open a channel back to them," she ordered. The communications officer nodded and gave her the signal that they were broadcasting. "This is Admiral Kate Stevens of Earth Defense Command," she began, trying to keep her voice professional. "We received your message, and honestly, we have some questions. First, did you guys seriously just show up here with your ships arranged like some kind of disco ball formation? Because from down here, looks like you're getting ready for the galaxy's most boring dance party." The Zorathian bridge fell silent. Admiral Vexstar stared at the communication screen as if it had just spoken in an unknown language. His tactical officer, Kreshon, turned to look at him with confusion written across his alien features. "What is a disco ball?" Kreshon asked quietly. "More importantly," Vexstar replied, "what is a dance party?" Back on Earth, news networks were already picking up the story. Dr. Susan Blake, the planet's leading xenobiologist, was hastily called into a television studio to provide expert commentary on humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. "Well, Tom," she said to the news anchor, "based on their formation patterns and aggressive display behavior, I'd say these aliens are following classic intimidation tactics. It's actually quite similar to what we see in many Earth species. The peacock mantis shrimp, for example, spreads its colorful appendages in a threatening display before attacking. These Zorathians seem to be doing the same thing, just with spaceships instead of claws." The comparison spread across social media faster than a wildfire in a paper factory. Within minutes, memes were appearing with alien ships photoshopped to look like mantis shrimp, complete with googly eyes and silly captions. Meanwhile, the Zorathian fleet remained in position, their crews trying to process what had just happened. In their entire history of conquest, no civilization had ever responded to their threats with questions about dance parties. Their advanced computers were working overtime, trying to analyze human communication patterns and cultural references. "Sir," reported the Zorathian intelligence officer, "our cultural analysis systems are having difficulty processing their response. They appear to be comparing our fleet formations to something called disco balls and dance parties, but our databases contain no reference to these concepts." Admiral Vexstar felt the first stirrings of something he had never experienced in his long military career: confusion. Not the simple confusion of facing unexpected tactics or weapons, but the deep, unsettling confusion of encountering a species that seemed to operate by completely different rules than every other civilization in the galaxy. "Continue monitoring their communications," he ordered, "and find out what a disco ball is." Supreme Commander Vekval had not earned his reputation as the most feared military mind in the galaxy by accepting confusion as an answer. When Admiral Vexstar reported the strange human response, Vekval decided to take personal control of the situation. He had conquered 47 different species, and never once had a primitive civilization responded to his threats with questions about dancing. "Prepare a direct communication link to their planetary leadership," Vekval commanded from his massive command ship. "I will speak to their ruler myself and end this foolishness." The Zorathian computers worked for several hours trying to identify Earth's supreme leader. They intercepted thousands of communications, analyzed government structures, and finally determined that a human called President Danny Rodriguez held the highest position of authority on the planet. President Rodriguez was in his office at the White House, trying to finish his lunch between emergency meetings about the alien situation. He had been president for 2 years and thought he had seen everything, but giant alien fleets demanding surrender was definitely not covered in any of his briefing materials. When his chief of staff burst through the door to announce that the alien commander wanted to speak with him personally, Rodriguez nearly choked on his sandwich. "They want to video call with me?" Rodriguez asked, wiping mustard from his chin. "Like a normal phone call, but with space aliens?" "Yes, sir," his chief of staff replied. "Our tech people have figured out how to connect their communication system to our networks. They're waiting for your response." Rodriguez looked down at his casual clothes and the pile of paperwork scattered across his desk. His coffee mug, a gift from his daughter that read, "World's Best Dad," in bright blue letters, sat next to a half-eaten bag of pretzels. "Well," he said with a shrug, "I guess we're making history today." Put them through. The main screen in the Oval Office flickered to life, showing the imposing figure of Supreme Commander Thekval. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, with dark purple skin and eyes like burning coals. His uniform was covered with medals and symbols of rank that spoke of countless victories. Behind him, the bridge of his warship stretched into the distance. Like a cathedral of metal and power, Thekval expected to see a trembling ruler surrounded by advisors and guards, perhaps kneeling in terror or begging for mercy. Instead, he found himself looking at a middle-aged human sitting casually in a chair, wearing a sweater and jeans, casually munching on small twisted bread items. "So you're here to conquer us?" Rodriguez asked between bites of pretzel, his tone as casual as if he was discussing the weather. "Have you tried filing the proper paperwork with the United Nations? We have a whole process for this sort of thing." Thekval's eyes narrowed like a hawk focusing on prey. "I am Supreme Commander Thekval of the Zorithian Empire. I do not file paperwork. I take worlds through superior force and tactical brilliance." Right, Rodriguez nodded, reaching for another pretzel. "But see, here on Earth, we have laws about that kind of thing. You can't just show up and claim a planet without going through the proper channels. There are forms to fill out, environmental impact studies, zoning permits. It's a whole thing." The alien commander felt something strange happening in his mind, like gears that had run smoothly for centuries, suddenly grinding against each other. Forms? Environmental impact studies? What are you talking about? "Well, for starters," Rodriguez continued, pulling out a thick folder from his desk, "you'd need to file a declaration of hostile intent with the UN Security Council. That's Form 27B. Then there's the Planetary Conquest Application, which is Form 85C. But you can't submit that without first completing the Species Compatibility Assessment, which is Form 12A. While this surreal conversation was taking place, something unprecedented was happening across Earth's internet. The alien invasion had become the most talked about topic in human history, but not in the way the Zorithians expected. Alex Chun, a 17-year-old from California, was live streaming his reaction to the invasion while playing his favorite video game. His bedroom was messy with clothes scattered everywhere and posters of various movies covering the walls. He had started the stream as a joke, but now had over 2 million viewers watching him make jokes about the alien ships. "Okay, so check this out," Alex said to his camera while pointing at images of the Zorithian fleet on his second monitor. These aliens spent probably thousands of years developing faster-than-light travel, advanced weapons, and artificial intelligence. And they still arrange their ships like they're playing cosmic checkers. Like, did nobody in their entire civilization think to maybe mix up the formation a little bit? His viewers were loving it. The chat was moving so fast with laughs and jokes that Alex could barely keep up. Someone had already created a meme showing the alien ships with the caption, "When you use the same strategy in every video game," and it was spreading across social media faster than the Zorithian Intelligence Network could track. Dr. Susan Blake found herself becoming an overnight celebrity as news networks competed to get her expert opinion on the alien threat. She appeared on 3 different shows in one day, and each time she couldn't help but point out the similarities between Zorithian behavior and Earth animals. The formation they're using is actually quite fascinating from a biological perspective, she explained to a panel of worried-looking news anchors. It's a classic intimidation display, very similar to what we see in peacock mantis shrimp or certain species of pufferfish. They're trying to appear larger and more threatening than they actually are. "So you're saying these aliens are basically cosmic pufferfish?" asked the lead anchor. In terms of their threat display behavior, yes, Dr. Blake replied with a slight smile. They're puffing themselves up to look scary. This comparison immediately went viral. Within hours, someone had created a video compilation showing the alien fleet alongside footage of pufferfish expanding themselves, set to conical music. The video got 15 million views in its first day online. Back on the Zorethian flagship, intelligence officers were working frantically to understand what was happening on Earth's communication networks. They had never encountered a species that responded to invasion by creating something called memes, which appeared to be some form of cultural weapon designed to make everything seem ridiculous. "Sir," reported one confused intelligence officer to Supreme Commander Thekval, "the humans are comparing our fleet formations to inflatable fish and small dancing crustaceans. They appear to find this extremely amusing." Thekval stared at the report as if it were written in an alien language, which in a way it was. For the first time in his long career, he was beginning to understand that humanity might be more dangerous than any enemy he had ever faced, not because of their weapons or their technology, but because they seemed completely incapable of taking anything seriously. Supreme Commander Thekval decided that words were clearly not working with these strange humans. After 3 days of increasingly bizarre conversations about paperwork and dancing, he chose to demonstrate the raw power of the Zorethian Empire through action. He would destroy something impressive and watch the humans crumble in terror like every other species before them. Target the uninhabited moon orbiting their 4th planet. Thekval ordered his weapons officer. "We will show them what happens to worlds that refuse to surrender to the Empire." The Zorethian fleet moved into perfect attack formation around the small moon. Every ship positioned itself according to thousands of years of military tradition, creating a sphere of destruction that had never failed to impress conquered peoples. The weapons charged with energy that could be seen glowing across space, like angry stars. Admiral Vexstar watched from his bridge as the countdown began. "All ships report ready, Supreme Commander. The demonstration will commence in 30 seconds. Captain Jake Murphy was monitoring the alien fleet from his station when he noticed their movement toward the outer system. "Lisa, are you seeing this?" He called to his communications officer. "They're surrounding Mars moon, Dimas. Should we try to stop them?" Ryan Cole asked from his tactical station that they all knew their small defense fleet could do nothing against 10,000 alien warships. "No," Jake replied grimly. "I think they're about to show us what their weapons can do. Record everything." Zorethian weapons fired simultaneously, creating a display of destruction that lit up space like a miniature sun. Dimas disappeared in a brilliant explosion that could be seen from Earth with the naked eye. The aliens had turned an entire moon into cosmic dust in less than 5 seconds. Thekval smiled with satisfaction as he watched the explosion fade. This was the moment when every species realized they had no choice but to surrender. He waited for the terrified communications from Earth, the desperate pleas for mercy, the immediate capitulation that always followed such demonstrations. Instead, his communications officer looked up with a confused expression. "Sir, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the human world, but they don't appear to be surrender messages." "What are they saying?" Thekval demanded. "They're saying it looks exactly like something called the Death Star explosion from Star Wars, and they want to know if we got the idea from watching their movies." Within hours of the moon's destruction, human social media exploded with comparisons to the famous scene from Star Wars where the Death Star explodes in a brilliant ball of light. Someone had already created a side-by-side video showing the real explosion next to the movie scene, and the similarities were impossible to ignore. But humans being humans, they didn't stop at simple comparisons. People all over Earth started recreating the explosion using everything they could find. Teenagers dropped Mentos candy into bottles of soda and filmed the eruption in slow motion. Amateur pyrotechnics experts set off carefully planned fireworks displays. Someone in Texas used model rockets in flour to create a surprisingly accurate miniature version. Colonel Nick Parker was stationed at the Marine base on Luna when he got the idea that would make him famous across the solar system. He gathered his entire unit in the recreation area and announced they were going to recreate the alien attack as an elaborate dance routine. "Okay, people, listen up," Parker said to his confused Marines. "We're going to show these aliens how Earth really does military demonstrations." The Marines spent 6 hours choreographing and practicing their routine. They used glow sticks for the weapons charging, had 20 soldiers form a circle around one person representing the moon, and created the explosion by having everyone jump outward while throwing biodegradable confetti into the air. Someone played dramatic music while they performed the entire sequence. The video of Colonel Parker's Marines performing the Dymas Destruction Dance got 50 million views in its first week. Comments poured in from people around the world, creating their own versions. School kids did it in gymnasiums. Office workers performed it during lunch breaks. And retirement homes organized senior citizen versions. Captain Maya Rodriguez received orders that most military officers would consider suicide. Earth Defense Command wanted her to take a small fleet of ships and approach the alien flagship, not to attack, but to deliver humanity's response to their demonstration of power. "You want me to fly directly toward 10,000 alien warships?" Maya asked Admiral Stevens during their briefing. "That's right," Stevens replied. "We're going to show them what human psychological warfare looks like." Maya's fleet consisted of 12 converted mining ships and a few research vessels, hastily equipped with the most powerful speakers Earth could manufacture. As they approached the Zorathian formation, Maya opened communications with the alien fleet. "Attention, Zorathian Empire," she broadcast. "This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Fleet. We saw your little light show with our moon, and we have to say we're impressed. So impressed, in fact, that we'd like to share some of our culture with you." Before the aliens could respond, Maya's ships began broadcasting music at maximum volume across all frequencies. The first song was Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, and it was specifically chosen because humans had spent decades using it to confuse and annoy each other on the internet. The Zorathian crews found themselves listening to upbeat music, with lyrics about never giving someone up or letting them down. The song was strangely catchy, and several alien crew members caught themselves humming along without realizing it. "What is this psychological attack?" Admiral Vextar demanded of his intelligence officers. "We believe it's called a rickroll, sir," came the bewildered reply. "Our analysis suggests it's a form of harmless prank that humans use on each other for entertainment." But Maya wasn't finished. Her fleet continued broadcasting Earth's greatest hits, moving from pop music to classical symphonies to heavy metal. The aliens found their communication networks flooded with human music, and their crews began exhibiting strange behaviors, like tapping their appendages in rhythm and nodding their heads to the beat. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Pete Harrison was working on a different kind of psychological warfare from his computer station on Earth. He had discovered that the Zorathian battle computers were using standard galactic communication protocols, which meant they were vulnerable to the same kind of spam that had plagued human email systems for decades. Pete started simple, sending a few test messages to the alien network. When he realized they were getting through, he unleashed everything. Humanity had learned about annoying digital communications. Within 6 hours, every Zorathian ship was receiving thousands of messages about extended warranties for their vehicles, cryptocurrency investment opportunities, and invitations to join Earth's social media platforms. The alien computer systems, designed for efficient military communications, began slowing down as they tried to process advertisements for products that didn't exist and services that made no sense in their culture. Some ships reported their computers were asking them if they wanted to hot single aliens in their area, which caused considerable confusion among the crew members. Admiral Vextar sat in his command chair, staring at the 17 different peace treaty proposals that had arrived in his communication system over the past 24 hours. Each document was more confusing than the last, written in a style that seemed designed to make his brain hurt. The humans appeared to treat interstellar diplomacy like some kind of elaborate joke that only they understood. The first proposal suggested that the Zorithian Empire could have Earth on weekends and holidays, but humans would keep it during business hours from Monday through Friday. The second offered to share the planet on alternating weeks, like divorced parents sharing custody of a child. The third, which had arrived just an hour ago, proposed that aliens could rule the northern hemisphere while humans kept the southern hemisphere, with a neutral zone at the equator where both species could meet for coffee and casual conversation. "Sir," his communications officer reported nervously, "we have another treaty proposal incoming. This one is from someone called Amy Foster, and she claims to be a lawyer." Vextar rubbed his temples with his four-fingered hands. "What does this one say?" "She proposes that we can conquer Earth, but only if we agree to follow all local laws and regulations, including speed limits for our spaceships, noise ordinances for our weapons, and mandatory environmental impact assessments for any planet-destroying activities." The Admiral felt something happening in his mind that he had never experienced in his long military career. The humans called it a nervous breakdown, though he had no word for it in his own language. His hands were shaking, his voice was getting higher, and he kept making strange hiccup sounds when he tried to speak. Meanwhile, throughout the Zorathian fleet, something unprecedented was happening. Junior officers who had joined the military to see the galaxy and conquer new worlds were beginning to question everything they thought they knew about imperial expansion. The humans had not responded to their threats with fear or anger, but with something far more dangerous: curiosity and friendliness. Ensign Zektar was one of the first to crack. He had spent the last week monitoring human communications and had become fascinated by something called the Internet. The humans shared pictures of small, furry animals, made jokes about everything, and seemed to treat their own planetary problems with the same casual humor they showed toward alien invasion. "I want to request asylum," Zektar announced to his surprised commanding officer. "I want to live on the human world and attend something called Comic-Con." "What is Comic-Con?" his commander asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. "It's a gathering where humans dress up as fictional characters and celebrate stories about heroes and adventures," Zektar replied with excitement in his voice. "They have panels and discussions and something called cosplay competitions. It sounds amazing." Within days, 17 more Zorethian crew members had requested asylum just so they could participate in human cultural events. The requests were causing panic among the higher command, who had never dealt with soldiers wanting to defect to spend time with the enemy. Dr. Carl Jensen was a human anthropologist who had spent his career studying how different cultures interacted with each other. When the alien invasion began, he started working on a research paper that would change everything. He called it Galactic Conquest and the Inherent Absurdity of Bureaucratic Militarism. And somehow it had gotten distributed throughout the Zorathian fleet's computer network. The paper's main argument was simple but devastating to military minds. All imperial expansion was basically cosmic scale, territorial disputes between children who never learned to share their toys. Jensen used examples from Earth history, alien behavior patterns, and basic psychology to show that conquest was just organized bullying with better weapons. The paper spread through the Zorathian fleet like a virus. Soldiers who had spent there lives following orders without question, suddenly found themselves thinking about why they were conquering planets and whether it made any sense. Many realized they had no idea what their empire actually did with all the worlds they conquered, or why they needed so many of them. Commander Lisa Graham received what she considered the strangest military assignment in human history: Earth. Defense Command wanted her to lead a diplomatic mission that consisted entirely of inviting confused Zorathian officers to backyard barbecues and casual sporting events. "You want me to invite the alien invaders to a cookout?" Lisa asked her commanding officer. "That's right," came the reply. "We're calling it Operation Friendly Neighbor. We want to show them what human social interaction actually looks like." Lisa's team started by broadcasting invitations across all frequencies. They offered to teach interested aliens how to play baseball, invited them to family dinners, and suggested they might enjoy watching human movies together. The invitations were warm and genuine, treating the aliens like new neighbors who had just moved into the cosmic neighborhood. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of Zorathian crew members responded with questions about human food, sports, and entertainment. Many admitted they were tired of military rations and formal command structures and were curious about this thing called casual conversation. The first cultural exchange took place on a small space station at the edge of the solar system. 12 Zorathian officers met with Lisa's diplomatic team for what humans called a potluck dinner. Each human brought a different dish to share, while the aliens brought their own traditional foods. The evening was awkward at first, with the aliens standing stiffly in their military uniforms, while humans chatted casually about everything from weather to their favorite television shows. But something magical happened when Lisa's teammate brought out a guitar and started playing simple songs. Music, it turned out, was a universal language that transcended species barriers. The Zorathian officers found themselves relaxing as they listened to human melodies, and several admitted they had their own musical traditions back on their homeworld. One alien officer, Commander Vexino, revealed he played a 6-stringed instrument similar to a guitar and offered to perform for the group. The cultural exchange session lasted 12 hours instead of the planned 2. By the end, aliens and humans were sharing stories about their families, discussing their favorite foods, and making plans for future meetings. The Zorathian officers learned about human concepts like friendship, casual humor, and the simple pleasure of eating a meal without discussing military strategy. When the aliens returned to their ships, they carried with them something more dangerous than any weapon: the knowledge that their supposed enemies were actually quite likable people who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know them as individuals rather than conquering adversaries. Reports from the cultural exchange spread throughout the fleet faster than official communications. Soldiers who had spent months in rigid military formations started requesting permission to attend human social events. Many began questioning why they were pointing weapons at people who had invited them to dinner and offered to teach them how to throw baseballs. The end came not with a bang, but with a song. Supreme Commander Thekval stood on his bridge, watching his once mighty invasion fleet broadcasting Sweet Carolyn back toward Earth, complete with thousands of alien voices attempting to shout "Ba ba ba" at the appropriate moments. The sound was terrible and wonderful at the same time, like a choir of enthusiastic children who had never heard music before. It had been 3 weeks since the Zorathian fleet arrived to conquer humanity, and Thekval could no longer remember why conquest had seemed like a good idea. His military officers were attending human barbecues. His junior crew members were requesting asylum to join something called Comic-Con, and his own flagship's computer system was so clogged with spam about extended warranties that it took 5 minutes to send a simple message. "Sir," his communications officer reported with what sounded suspiciously like suppressed laughter, The Zorathian High Command is requesting an immediate status report on the conquest of Earth. Vekval looked around his bridge at officers who were humming human songs and tactical displays showing friendly dinner invitations instead of battle plans. How could he possibly explain to his superiors that humanity had defeated the greatest military force in galactic history by being aggressively nice to them? Tell them, Vekval said slowly, that we have encountered an enemy too dangerous to conquer. Captain Sam Mitchell was recording from his observation post when the historic moment arrived. The massive Zorathian flagship began broadcasting his formal surrender message, but not the kind anyone expected. Instead of the usual military language about tactical withdrawals and strategic repositioning, Admiral Vexstar appeared on screen looking confused and slightly embarrassed. People of Earth, Vexstar began, his voice lacking any of the menace it had carried 3 weeks earlier. The Zorathian Empire officially declares you too weird to conquer. We came here expecting a normal invasion with proper fear responses and military resistance. But instead, you invited us to dinner and made us question the fundamental purpose of our entire civilization. The message continued with Vexstar, explaining that the Zorathian High Command had voted unanimously to classify humanity as a galactic comedic hazard level 10 and would be issuing warnings to all other potential conquering species to approach Earth with extreme caution. We're not surrendering, Vexstar clarified, because you can't really surrender to people who defeat you with friendship and home-cooked meals. We're just leaving because, frankly, spending time around humans makes our brains hurt in ways we don't have words for. Ambassador Jenny Clark found herself with the strangest job in diplomatic history, negotiating a peace treaty with aliens who were surrendering because they couldn't figure out how to conquer people who kept being nice to them. The formal treaty. Negotiations took place on a neutral space station, with both sides sitting around a table that looked more like a family dinner than an international summit. So let me get this straight, Jenny said, reviewing the draft agreement. You want to establish formal diplomatic relations, cultural exchange programs, and joint research initiatives. But you also want us to promise that we'll participate in something called the Intergalactic Awkwardness Olympics? It's a completely fictional event that your people invented during our previous negotiations, explained Zorathian diplomat Kresheval. But our psychological evaluation teams believe that preparing for such an event might help other species understand human behavior patterns before they attempt invasion. The final treaty included provisions that no one could have imagined when the invasion began. The Zorathians agreed to share their advanced technology in exchange for human cultural education programs. They established student exchange systems where young aliens could come to Earth to learn about concepts like casual conversation, improvisational humor, and what humans called hanging out. Most surprisingly, the treaty included a clause requiring all future alien visitors to Earth to complete a mandatory orientation course called Understanding Human Weirdness, a survival guide for confused aliens. Former Supreme Commander Vekval surprised everyone by requesting permission to remain on Earth permanently. He opened a small restaurant on the Zorathian homeworld that specialized in something he had learned to love during the cultural exchanges: cheeseburgers. The restaurant became wildly popular among aliens who had heard stories about the strange humans and wanted to experience their culture safely. The secret, Vekval explained to a reporter from the Galactic News Network, is that humans don't just make food. They make food with love and share it with anyone who's hungry, even their enemies. It's completely illogical and absolutely wonderful. Human tourists began booking passage on converted Zorathian warships for what became known as conquest cruise experiences. Families could spend their vacations visiting other worlds and learning about different alien cultures, while a former invasion fleet found new purpose as the galaxy's most unusual travel service. Captain Jake Murphy, now promoted to Admiral, was enjoying his morning coffee when the next crisis arrived. His communications officer, Lisa Park, looked up from her station with an expression he had learned to recognize over the past month. "Admiral," Lisa said with barely contained amusement, "we're receiving a surrender demand from something called the Krelthak Warrior Empire. They're demanding our immediate capitulation and threatening to destroy our planet if we resist." Jake looked at the message scrolling across his screen and noticed it was written in the same formal military language the Zarathians had used. Also noticed that the alien fleet approaching Earth was arranged in the same geometric formations that had seemed so intimidating a month ago. "Send them our standard response," Jake ordered, settling back in his chair with his coffee. "Which standard response, sir?" Lisa asked. "The new one. Tell them we're busy this millennium and suggest they try turning their death rays off and on. Again. Then send them a copy of Dr. Jensen's paper about galactic conquest being cosmic-scale playground disputes and invite their commanding officers to a potluck dinner." Within hours, the Krelthak fleet was receiving spam emails about extended warranties, memes comparing their ship formations to various Earth animals, and formal invitations to participate in humanity's first annual intergalactic awkwardness Olympics, which had somehow become a real event that alien species across the galaxy were eager to attend. The Zorathian Empire's official report to the Galactic Council concluded with a warning that would become famous throughout the galaxy. "Approach humans with extreme caution. They will make you question everything you thought you knew about military protocol, dignity, and the basic nature of interstellar relations. They are not conquered by superior firepower or tactical brilliance. They are conquered only by their own kindness, which they use as a weapon more devastating than any death ray ever invented." Earth had become the galaxy's first planet to achieve peace through aggressive friendship, and the universe would never be quite the same again.